let's begin our final painting. You'll notice that you have your PDF for your template in the file section of the Facebook group. And don't freak out, the template is not completely finished. You can't get it any larger than this and have it be able to print out on one sheet. But the bottom of our figure is going to be very simple, so don't freak out when it looks like your PDF is not all the way there. When it looks like your template is missing pieces. It's not. So this is the actual size of the template when you print it out. I'm using a 16 by 20 canvas, so it's actually not quite large enough for my canvas, so I'm going to make this a bit larger so that it fills up my canvas a bit more. Depending on the size canvas you're using, this may be the size you need. For example, if you're using a 12 by 16 canvas, this is probably the perfect size. It may even be a little bit too large. Anything smaller than that, you're definitely going to need to size it down. You could put this on a printer and enlarge it, but then it would require printing on two sheets and taping them together to put them on. Or you can do what I'm going to do today. The first thing you want to do is just cut your template out. You want to go right along the line. Come just on the outside a little bit if you like. And this is a very, very basic shape. You may not even need or want to use the template, but I provided it for those of you who are not comfortable with drawing on your own. Before you start pressing on your canvas, you want to make sure that you have something underneath it. So I have a really large journal here. You can see how big that is. I think it's 11 by something. When it's opened up, I can't really remember. So I'm just going to place that under my canvas so that I have a good, solid foundation to press on. And you want to try and figure out where your book ends or whatever it is that you've got underneath your canvas to make sure you're not going to just fall off the edge. Once you have your template cut out, you want to place it on your canvas, figure out where you want it to be. You might want to tape it in place a little bit so that it doesn't shift or move. I'm just using a tiny bit of painter's tape. Now using a graphite pencil, you don't want to press too hard, you just want to gently sketch in the outline. Just follow right along the line of your template, just on the outside edge of it, making your shape as large as you want it to be. And right here I'm just going to draw right over my tape. I can fill that line in later. And you just want to get the basic line down. It doesn't matter if it's perfect right now. We're going to go back and fix it. Okay, now here at the bottom where your template ends, you just want to bring the 2 points together to form a rounded V. I'm going to flip this so you can see what I'm doing. So I just want to find the center point of my figure, roughly. Kind of draw a line down, figuring out how long I want my figure to be. So that's roughly the center, right there. And now I just want to bring these two lines around to create a large rounded V. Once you're happy with your basic shape, you can go back and erase anything you don't want You don't have to press very hard with your eraser. Hopefully you've been using a really light hand to create your outline. And most of this will get covered through the painting anyway. Now I'm going to remove my template. Check your overall design, your overall shape. Make sure it's still the way you want it to look. Change anything you don't like. This is the time where you want to like tweak it and even it out. Erase anything you don't like. Fill in any gaps. Fix any mistakes. Make sure that your outline is what you want it to be before you start painting. Once you're happy with your overall outline, you want to go back with your Prismacolor pencil just like we did before on the other paintings and go right back over that graphite. And outline your form again. Make sure you move your canvas if you need to. If whatever's underneath your canvas does not completely fill in the center hole, then you need to make sure you're moving your canvas as you work so that you constantly have something as a foundation underneath what you're drawing on. Now you want to go back with an eraser and gently erase the graphite. I'm using the flat edge of my eraser and I'm not pressing hard, except right here where I've got some spots that I'm really not happy with. Some of that graphite's just showing up more than I want. Make sure you've got something under your canvas here, especially when you're erasing. Once you're happy with your outline, you can go ahead and start working on your background. You'll notice that your supply list has been updated with some new items that are specific for this paint. Most of the things we'll be using are from the previous paintings as well. We used those in the previous paintings, but I did add a few additional items. You'll see that the supply list now includes light green, and this is just Artist Loft. Manganese blue, this one is Soho brand. Permanent red, I happen to be using Fundamentals, but you can use whatever brand you've got. And fluorescent red acrylic paint. Now this one is a Duravan and it is acrylic art and craft paint, so it's more fluid. It's almost like a golden fluid acrylic. And then you'll also notice there are 3 inks listed. They're all Daler Rowney FW brand. So these 2 are matte inks. This one is turquoise and this one is light green. They are matte. They don't have any shimmer to them. And this one is an FW pearlescent because it is iridescent. This is Genesis green and this is like one of my favorite colors. It's such a gorgeous color. And this one is iridescent. Again, please keep in mind that the supply list is just what I used in the painting. It is not necessary for you to go out and purchase every single one of these paints or every single one of these items. If you think you'll use something quite a bit, then and you really want it and you can afford it, then go out and purchase those items. But use what you have on hand. If you've already got green and blue or purple paint or something that you want to use instead, use that. You don't have to go out and purchase these exact items. This is just what I used in the painting, so if you want to create the same look, then you'll know what products I had on hand. Okay, let's get started. Now, if you are using a pre-gessoed canvas, you do not have to go back and gesso again. If your canvas is not gessoed, please make sure you apply a coat of gesso before you get started. I am working on a pre-gessoed canvas, so I'm just going to start laying down some paint. Okay, the first color I'm going to use is Hooker's Green. Now, I'm not using anything today that has any of those warning labels on it, so I will not be wearing my rubber gloves, and I'm actually just going to be painting with my fingers. So you want to make sure that you have something up underneath your canvas so that you can press down, and you just want to start rubbing in some of this paint with your fingers. Make sure you move your canvas as you need to ensure that you've got something underneath it. Now we're not covering the entire canvas, you just want to put this down and work it into random places. Don't forget to paint the edges, the outside edges. And you just want to drag the paint till it doesn't move anymore. If you press very gently, you can lift your canvas off when you need to so that you don't get those lines, those marks from whatever's underneath your canvas supporting it. Oh, I got some way up here. Let's just rub that on. And you just want to keep spreading that paint till it just won't go anymore. And there's no real thought to this. You just want to put some on your hands and rub it into your canvas. Now notice I'm kind of staying right around the outside edge of my figure. For now, we're going to come back in and do that, but when you first get started, you just want to blob the paint on and kind of rub it in. We'll come back and blend her in before we go to the next color. And try to do different movements when you're applying your paint. So apply some in circles, apply some in back and forth, some side to side. You just don't want anything to be too perfect. And I know I'm kind of off camera right now, but my canvas is so large. It's just hard for me to get the whole thing in the shot. But I'm just doing the same thing here at the bottom, just so that it matches the rest of the canvas. You want to make sure that you go to the edges, that you don't keep it just in the middle. You want to run it off the edge and bring it back into the center. And you don't want to fill in every little spot right now. We're just creating some depth and layers and interest here in the background. Okay, now you want to start blending in your figure. So you want to do the same thing. You just want to kind of go around the line and blend it in a few random spots. And your lines are going to get a little bit lost, but that's okay. We're going to go back in and define them before they get completely lost. As a matter of fact, if you're really worried about it, go ahead now and define the lines of your template or whatever image you have drawn on your canvas. Just define them a little bit more so they stand out and they're harder to cover with the paint. And you can always do this multiple times if you need to. So if you start making your background and your image starts to get lost, just take a moment, pause, and go back over your outline. That way she doesn't completely disappear. Once you've got that first color, your hooker's green or whatever green you're using, kind of evenly dispersed around the entire painting, you want to move on to your next color. I'm going to bring in some light green. And now you want to start filling in the holes that are still white and blending your two colors together. So you want to kind of work quickly while your paint is wet. That way you can blend it together. You can't really tell where one color ends and the next begins. Kind of dab it on there and then work it in. Make sure you've got something to press on because you really need to work this paint into the canvas. If you've got little bits of white showing through, that's okay because we're going to be doing this with multiple colors. Again, you want to blend your figure in. Move whatever it is underneath your canvas around so that you have good pressure no matter where you're pressing on your canvas. Don't forget the edges. And you can see where it's overlapping, where one color is touching the next. I'm really kind of working it in and blending those two colors. You don't want it to look like one's just laying on top of the next. There should be blurred lines there where you can't really tell which one's the top layer and which one you put on there first. Just work them in together. And if it's not really blending the way you want, that's okay. Just keep going. And you can go back and blend after you get your foundation layer down. You can add a little bit more of each color and really blend them in together. You want to make sure you're filling in these gaps around your figure. And working the edges of your canvas. Once you have your background kind of filled in with the two different shades of green, you want to start coming in with your blue. So I've got the manganese blue, and I'm just going to dab it on in these white areas and really blend the blue over the top of the green. Now if your painting starts to feel a little bit sticky, you can just wet your fingers and wet your paint, and that'll help it really just spread and move a lot easier. If you feel like your blue is going to cover too much of your dark green, the hooker's green, you can go back in with that first or blend them together while the blue is still wet. Add in a little bit more of that darker green. It's okay if this doesn't look perfect right now. You don't want it to look perfect. You just want some bits of dark, some bits of light. So I'm going to go back over all of my areas of Hooker's green. Just darken them down a little bit more. And you can see I'm really just rubbing it on. Wherever it goes is where it goes. Now I'm going to come back with the manganese blue and wet fingers. And you want to fill in any little white spots that are left. And you can see, because I'm blending this manganese blue while the green is still wet, I'm getting a really dark teal color, a turquoise. That's good, that's what you want. Well, that's what I want. That may not be what you want. So just kind of blend that blue all around. And again, work it just until it doesn't move anymore. If you cover up your line a little bit, just thin it out. And it helps to use a heavy hand to kind of smear it and get it working, especially when you're adding the water in. Use that heavier hand to really spread the paint and make it move around, and then a really light feathery touch to blend it over the top of the green. Keep your water handy so that you can continue to wet your paint and make it smear a little bit better. You want to work quickly here because you want to keep working all of this paint while it's all still wet. You don't want to let any of this dry. And if you get more blue in some spots than others, that's okay too. Really just filling in any of the white spots that are left. If it looks like the blue is just laying on top, then you need it a little bit more wet, and you need to spread it a little bit more with your fingers. Just work it till it doesn't move anymore. If you've got some little white spots, you can take a bit of water and kind of massage it into the paint, and it allows you to fill in those spots. If you've got water running, just rub it in. We're actually going to be using that in a minute, but for now you want to be able to cover your canvas, so cover those white spots. If it starts to look a little bit too blue, you can go back with some of the green, but our figure is actually going to be green, so you want the background to be a little bit more blue. But not too much, because we're still going to be adding layers. Okay, now, while this is all still wet, you want to take a fairly large paintbrush, dip it into your water, and then just dab it on. Let the water drops fall where they will. And you'll notice that your paint starts to like bead up where your water lands. That's what you want. Make sure you cover your figure too, because you don't want it to look like the water drops stop before they get to her. So just fling that water on there and let it set for a few minutes. I've let these water drops sit on here for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, long enough to just go rinse my hands a little bit. Now I'm going to take a dry cloth. You can use a dry baby wipe or a dry paper towel and lay it on there and blot off these water spots. You don't want to blot too much. You just want to soak up the excess water and remove the paint from those areas. And you still need your paint to be kind of wet in case you need to go back and add more water spots if you want more water spots. So you want to work kind of quickly before your paint has time to completely dry. Ooh, look at that one. That one's beautiful. Oh, yes. You don't want the water to run. You want these spots to remain where they are. So keep your canvas flat. I'm just lifting mine up so you can see what I'm doing at the bottom. Look at that. Where the paint has dried a little bit more, the water's actually pulling off even better. So take a step back from your canvas and look at it. If you want more water spots in one area or in a few areas, just go back with the paint with the water again. Drip on a few spots and let it set. The longer you let it set, the more paint it's going to remove. Okay, this has been sitting for a few minutes again, so I'm going to come back and blot these new wet places. And if your paper towel isn't really soaking up the water anymore, get a drier paper towel. And in some places, like down here, you'll see it's just removing the top layer of blue and I've still got the green showing through. And in other places where the paint was thinner, it's removed everything that was there and I'm back down to the canvas, which is cool. Once you think you have all the water dabbed off, just go back and tilt your canvas, move it around. Make sure you've got any large drips of water kind of soaked up. And once you have all the water drips soaked up and you have your background looking the way you want it to, you want to hit this with the heat gun or let it dry overnight. Let it dry completely. Once your canvas is completely dry, you want to come in with a light shade of blue. I'm using the Duravan Matisse Flow Cobalt Teal. And you're going to do the same exact thing. So you're going to dab it on and then kind of smear it around with some wet fingers in a few places. You're not trying to cover up the green. You just want to add another layer. And you also don't want to cover up too many of your water spots. So you want to try and go in between and around the water spots that you've got on here. You may even want to wet your canvas a little bit before you add the paint. So now you're trying to just fill in where you don't already have water spots. Okay. Now while this paint is fairly wet, like I just put it on there, so you're going to go back and do more of those water drops right over the top of this teal. Let it sit. So here you're going to work in smaller patches. Work a little bit more quickly. Filling in where there's no water spots already with this light blue or teal, whatever you're using. If you cover some of your water spots, that's okay, because you want it to be blended. Now while that's wet, drip on some more water drops. You want quite a bit of water drops on the teal here. Remember to blend into your figure, so she's not just sitting over there by herself. You want to blend that teal in and let that sit for a few minutes. The more wet your paintbrush is, the larger your water drops are going to be, like these. And then as your paintbrush starts to dry out, you'll get little tiny water drops and little flicks of water like these. So if you only want the larger ones, then you want to keep your paintbrush very wet. If you only want the smaller ones, then you want to dip your paintbrush in and then maybe wring it out a little bit. Maybe wipe it on a paper towel and then fling little drops of water. I'm going to go rinse my hands again and let this water sit on top of the teal. Okay, this has been on here for a couple of minutes, so you're going to do the same thing. Come back and blot. Blot away those really wet water spots. And don't worry if it looks like the teal is just sitting on top right now. We're getting ready to fix that, but you want to do this step first. Once you have your water spots blotted off, you want to take a really wet finger, go right along the edge of that teal, if it looks like it's laying on top, and thin it out and spread it more into the green just to blend it a little bit better, and then come back and blot. So now the teal is no longer just laying on top. It's actually blended in. You can do little circular motions to help blend it out. And then the blotting is really going to help erase any harsh lines that you've got. Once you're happy with this layer, you want to dry it completely or let it sit overnight to make sure that this paint is completely dry and completely set before you go to the next layer. Now you want to take some dioxazine purple and a Q-tip. You just want to dip your Q-tip right into the dioxazine purple and go through and make a few little dots all through your canvas. And you may want to do 3 or 5 dots at a time. You may want them to all be random and have different numbers. But you want to kind of just space them out. Throughout the entire background. Oops. If you put some on that you're not happy with, just hit them while they're really wet with some water. Get them really, really wet, and then blot them off. While your dots are wet, you want to take a large, flat paintbrush, get it highly soaked with water, and then you just want to lay your paintbrush flat on your dots and just dab. One little dab and lift it off. Keep wetting your paintbrush because you want it to be completely soaked. You want to make sure that every one of your little polka dots gets wet. And just let that puddle of water sit on top of your dots while you're doing the rest of the painting. Just let it sit there. If they get a little smudged, that's okay. Back, double check, make sure you have every one of your polka dots wet. Super soaked. Now let this water stay on these drops for at least 2 to 3 minutes. Just let it sit there and do its thing. Once your water's been sitting for a few minutes, you want to go back over each little set of dots and give it just a little wiggle with a wet paintbrush. It doesn't need to be soaked in water because you've already got your little puddle of water here. But I'm just doing this motion very, very slightly, just a little wiggle back and forth. Just to loosen that paint up a little bit more. And it looks like you're just drawing lines, but trust me, you're not. Just wait for it. Kind of scrubbing that paint just a tiny bit to loosen it up. Okay, once you have them all scrubbed a little bit, this next part gets messy. So you might want to line your workspace with some paper towels or some other shop towel that you may use. And you want to make sure that your towel goes past the edge of your canvas on both sides. Then you're just going to lift and start rocking this painting back and forth. so that paint really starts to run. Now you just want to let it run down and do its thing. You can tap it to really make it run. You can apply more water right at the top to really make it run. Once you're happy with the drippage that you're getting, you want to go back and clean up any of these little spots that look too smudgy. You want to leave the drip marks and just clean up any of these paint drops that are just too smudged. Anything that you don't like, blot it off now. Anywhere the drip is just too dark or too vivid, anything you don't like, now's the time to blot it off. And I'm just barely touching my canvas with this dry baby white. Well, it's not so dry now because I've been using it, but kind of smear and blot any of these little polka dots that are too grainy looking. And just kind of smear them down a little bit. Don't be afraid to work it. Remove what you don't like. Now we're going to come in with this fluorescent red. Mine's basically like a bright pinky orange, but it just looks amazing with this teal and green. And you're just going to take a palette knife or other flat straight edge tool, and you want to get just the flat edge coated in a little bit of paint, and you want to draw some straight lines on the canvas, thin straight little lines. If your lines go a little wonky, you can erase them now while they're wet. Now with that same paintbrush, that large paintbrush you've been using, you want to kind of wring it out on your paint cup and dry it just a little bit. Now you want to just soften those lines a little bit. Not all of them, just a few of them. You want some of them to be vivid and some to be more soft. Hit this with the heat gun or let it dry completely. When your painting's completely dry, You want to come back in with your next layer. Now we're going to come back to our brilliant yellow green that we've used before. And you're basically going to cover all of this up. But don't freak out. Just trust me. So you want to squirt some of this on your fingers, just like you've done before. Kind of blot it in any of the areas that you're not really happy with. Anything that's too blue or too red. You just want to go right over the top of that with some of this brilliant yellow green. Just going to kind of blot that on. And it's going to look like you're basically covering your entire painting up. That's alright. Don't worry. Just trust me. Once you have your green rubbed in, you want to take your paintbrush, make sure it's pretty wet, and you want to blend everything in. You don't want to rub it anymore, you just want to kind of blend those harsh lines with a really wet paintbrush. So it looks like you're giving your entire painting a wash of this brilliant yellow green, and some areas will be more covered than others, and that's what you want. This is just going to bring everything together. Now, fresh, dry paper towel or baby wipe, lay it on and blot it off. Now here's where you want to take off as little or as much of that green paint as you want. You can get in there and really work it, kind of rubbing it in like so. Make sure you've got something under your canvas so you can press. You can actually go in there and kind of buff and rub some of this green away. Now you want to do the same thing with your manganese blue. Just rub it on. Don't forget to blend your figure in. And my fingers are not wet. I'm just spreading this paint around. A little bit on each corner here. If you feel like you've got too much, don't worry, you can always wash it back off. If it is too much, just blot it off. Wet it really well and blot it off. Okay, really wet paintbrush. Blend it over the top. And now go back and remove whatever you don't want on there. You want your top layer, your finished layer, to be fairly blue. with a lot of the green showing through. Go back over those places with your water dots. If you feel like enough of this blue isn't coming off, wet your paintbrush again, kind of rub it in, and blot. See how it's now sending that red to the back? It's kind of covering any of those streak marks that you may not have been happy with. Then you can take your cloth and kind of just give it a once over, kind of rub it all down. Removing any harsh lines. If you've lost your figure, you want to go back, kind of define that line a little bit more, just so it's easier to see when we get ready to go back in and work on her, which we're getting ready to do. If you can't really see the whole outline, find the lines that you can see and make the rest of the lines match up. Now we're going to go over our background one more time. So you're going to take some Titan Buff. Oh, mix a little bit of blue water. Or clear water. Plain water would be best because you want the Titan Buff and not so much of the blue. You just want it to be kind of thin. Now you're going to go back over your entire painting one more time. Remember to blend in your figure. If it's not spreading enough, add a little bit of water. Especially to the outlying edges, you want it to be really thin. You want it to be a little bit thicker right around your figure. And then really thin out here at the edges. This is just going to send everything in the background to the background a little bit more. And make your figure pop when we add the color. Again, go back in, blot it off. Get your paint really wet so that you can blot it very well. Keep it really wet. If you're working on one side of your canvas, you need to wet the other side as well. Because otherwise it's going to dry too quickly and you won't be able to blot it back off. So you want to keep this wet and keep it working. Wipe around your little goddess or fairy or whatever you're going to turn her into, your figure. Remember, you can come back in and completely rub out any of the areas that you really want to see from the background. This is just going to push your background back and make your figure pop out more. Keep wetting. Keep blotting. When you're happy with your background, hit it with the heat gun or let it completely dry overnight. Once you've dried your canvas, it's going to look kind of milky. Leave it this way until you finish your figure because you want your figure to pop out and you want your background to be pushed back to the back. So finish your figure, and then if she's still, like if you're still not happy with the background, if it looks too faded or too muted and you want to bring it forward a little bit more, then do this same technique again with maybe the cobalt teal or the brilliant yellow green, but leave it milky to begin with until you finish your figure, because you may feel differently about your background once your figure is completed. Draw your figure back in, make sure you have a nice strong outline, and now we're going to actually start creating the figure and filling in the center of our template. So I'm pretty zoomed in here. I know you can't see my entire figure anymore, but I want you to be able to see the technique. So I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit more, so that way you can really see what I'm doing here. Just know that everything you see me doing here, I'm doing for the entire figure. So even though you may not see me doing it on camera, I'm filling in my entire template with this technique. We're actually going to be filling in our figure with some acrylic ink. Now I'm comfortable using these inks just as they are and spreading them out because I know how they're going to react. If you've never used these acrylic inks before, or you're just not sure how they're going to react, then you may want to create a slightly raised border just around the outside of your template. You can do that with clear glue, you can do it with glossy accents, you can do it with embossing powder. You just want to create an actual edge that your inks will run to and then stop again, so that it doesn't continue to run. If you're using paint, you may not have the problem with the ink, with it running like the ink will. You'll be able to manipulate it a little bit more without the paint running over, especially if you're using thicker paint. But the inks tend to run, so that's just something to keep in mind as you're working. So you're going to take your inks and you're going to work with kind of all the colors at one time. So you want to have them opened and handy. And you just want to squirt random spots of each color, not too much at a time, because you need to be able to work it and spread it. And you can go back and add more if you need to. That's why you want them all open at once. And you can already kind of see how this is going to pop against your background. That's why you want that background to remain kind of milky, at least in the beginning. You also want to have a towel handy and a wet paintbrush so that you can fix any drips or runs or places that go over the edge that you don't want them to. Now you're going to take a toothpick and follow the outline of your figure and just spread out the ink. Right here on the edge you want to be careful and just spread the ink right to the edge with a toothpick. Kind of bring it towards the center. If you don't have enough ink towards the edge, then you can kind of move a puddle over a little bit. Now don't be afraid to turn your canvas here, but you need to be extremely careful if you do. And you want to work with one color at a time to begin with when you're doing your edge. Not that your entire edge has to be covered with that color, but you want to do all of the blue bits and then do the green ones. So you can see I did these two. Now I'm going to move up here and do this blue one, because it's still the same color. And you just want a nice straight line right around your template outline. And you want to make sure that the entire painting is just not done in one color. I want to start spreading out some of these other blue bits. Okay, so I'm just going to rinse my toothpick off, wipe it dry, and go back and start doing some of these green bits on the outline. You want to blend it with the blue, make it nice and smooth right there, and blend it around. If they get mixed, that's okay. we're going to be mixing them in just a few minutes anyway. And start spreading these inks out. If you're not quite ready to mix them yet and you get some mixture, you want to just pull it to the center and wipe off your toothpick. And then go back and start again with your edge. And you're just dragging that ink around. And if you're not familiar with these inks and how they work, you may want to work in smaller places, smaller areas at a time. Now you want to start blending these together a little bit, but not completely mixing them. You want that marbled effect, and you don't want to completely blend everything. Notice I've still got some spots that are completely blank and empty. Even along the outline, I've still got some spots that aren't filled in. So you want to spread this ink out, marbling them just a tiny bit where you need to, just to spread it a little bit more. Now you're going to come in with your next color. So far I've used the turquoise matte and the light green matte. Now I'm going to come in with the Genesis green and fill in kind of close to the edge. Whoops. Where I don't currently have any paint, so you just want to fill in right along the edge lines so that you can finish filling them in with the Genesis green. That way it's not all the same color all the way around on the edge. You're going to do the same thing, just kind of blend that up, take it to the edge. Marble it in a little bit. If you get little bubbles, that's normal. You can just kind of pop them, kind of drag and pop them. And you may find that you need to go a little slower when working with the inks. I work with these all the time, so I'm comfortable just kind of dragging them around and knowing how they're going to react. But take your time here, and if you need to, work in smaller areas. Start on the head, work the head, blend that down as you come, and then go to the center section and then work your way down towards the bottom. Don't feel like you have to build the whole body like I am right now. I'm comfortable with these inks. You may not be. You just don't want your inks to dry. You need to be able to manipulate them, so if you need to take your time, then you want to work in one section at a time. Once you have your entire outline done, you want to finish filling in the gaps, but not completely. So I'm just adding some more of the Genesis green because I don't have a whole lot of that on here right now. So I'm just adding a few drops of that. And this is just back and forth, back and forth. You're going to be marbling this, so you may need to add more green, you may need to add more blue, then you might want to bring some more of the Genesis green back in there, but you won't know until you start marbling. Now you want to start dragging the colors into each other, but not mixing them. So just kind of swirling around in some random patterns, getting all three of these colors slightly mixed together, but you're not changing the color. You want to see that it's Genesis green flowing through the blue and light green flowing through the Genesis green. If you feel like you don't have enough of one color or that it's not spreading well, just add some more of it. And then if you feel like a color is kind of taking over, like I've got a lot of green up here, so I'm going to add just a drop of blue and marble that in. See how I'm just kind of spreading it out, swirling it a little bit. You want to take it to the edge, but you want to be careful not to go over your edge. You just want to keep working back and forth, adding a drop or two of individual colors until you have your entire figure painted in with this swirly, marbled mixture of color. This is the time you also want to pop any little air bubbles that you see. So you just want to take and kind of drag your paintbrush through the air bubbles to pop them. And now while all of this is really wet, I have just a little bit of the white, Liquitex, titanium white acrylic ink, and I have a little puddle of it here. I'm just going to take a little bit on my toothpick and swirl it through. Just in a few tiny places. You're really just marbling in the white again. Just like you did the other colors, just not as much of it. Anywhere your paint has kind of gotten muddled, you can marble in some of this white and cover it up. Anywhere you've got large clumps of one color or another, just marble in a little bit of the white. Now you can do this in any colors. So if you're creating a fairy, you may want to use pinks and purples and blues. If you're creating just the female form, you may want to use peaches and pinks and you know, more flesh tones, oranges. I've decided to create a little goddess here, so I'm using the colors of the earth from space. So you just pick any colors that are going to go along with the image that you want to create. You don't have to use just the blues and the greens here. And you'll just pick one color at the end to kind of swirl through as a highlight. Make sure your white or whatever highlight color you're using is evenly distributed throughout your entire figure, and then let this dry completely. I think I want to add some more white to my background, so I'm just going to lay my template, my original template, right over the top of my figure here, just to mask it a little bit. Now I'm going to take my white acrylic ink whoops. If you get it on your figure, just blot it off. Use a little bit of water if you need to. That's why it's important that you make sure your figure is completely dry before you go back and do this step. Move my template over here. And now I still have some of this fluorescent red. I'm going to make a wash of that one. And do the same thing with that one. Clean off my figure, my goddess, especially the red, because there's no red anywhere else on her, so I want to make sure I get all that red off. And we might as well add some more of the purple, so I'm going to do that dioxazine purple. Make a wash of that one. And these paint splatters just fall where they will. There's no rhyme or reason to this. You can't really plan these paint drops out. And that may freak some of you out, but that's the beauty of this kind of painting, is you just kind of have to let go and let things be as they will. You can't control what happens with these paint splotches. And so if that's something that you normally struggle with, I highly recommend you use that technique frequently to help you kind of step out of that need for perfection. Now that's a little bit too vivid, a little bit too confetti-like, so now I'm going to blot these new dots off. And some are going to really come off and some are not. Again, that's the beauty of this, is you have to just let go of control. You can't control the outcome of this. I mean, you can, but why? You know, why bother? Just let it go and see what happens. I actually kind of like that kind of smeared. So I'm not really happy with the background. I think it's a little bit too muted. So what I'm going to do is take some iridescent gold. This is gold and fluid acrylics. You can use whatever iridescent gold paint you've got. Just going to kind of drip this on here a little bit. Does this have a warning? No. Okay. And I'm going to go back to that first technique where I'm just kind of blending it in with my fingers and some water. And again, blotting it off. And it's just play. You can see how many times I've changed the background of this painting. It's just getting it to a place that you're happy with it. And the brilliant yellow-green. Do some more of those water drops. And it's just playing back and forth until you get a look that you're happy with. Actually, I think I'm going to go back around her a little bit with this purple. Go right along the edge of your template there. If you get it on her, don't worry, you can come back and fix it and blend it out. I'm just kind of wishing I hadn't done the white. I really liked the vivid greens and blues, but I wanted my goddess to pop out a little bit more. But now I'm kind of regretting that decision. So you just want to take this right to the edge of your girl and then blend it out. Now, I could edit all of this out right now. I could edit every bit of this out, kind of take the painting back to where it was before I added the white, and I could probably edit it to where it wasn't quite so noticeable that I made all these changes. But I want you to see that I make mistakes too, and that I have to fight through paintings that I'm not happy with. And you just keep layering it on there until you are happy with it. I am very happy with her, so you need to be careful not to mess up any parts that you are happy with. Well, I guess it's too late for that because I already fucked up the background. Okay. I'm liking this purple though. I'm liking the purple outline. But I do wish the background was more vivid, so I could actually go back and brighten it up. And just start again, creating that water drip background, which I may do after the class is done. I may finish this painting for now and then go back and restart the background, but I won't make you guys sit through all of that. But I will show you the finished piece in the group once I get her done. So I'm just going to finish going along the outline here with this purple because I am liking that. So what I'm doing, the way I'm getting this effect is I'm taking the purple straight out of the tube and onto my finger and going, I gotta turn my painting upside down because it can't work that way. Alright, so I take the purple right along the edge of my girl, right? And just drag it, there's something in my paint. Just drag it down, following the outline. And then I wet my finger to make it blend a little bit better. Drag it down. And then I kind of spread it out a little bit, and you can see how it gets wispy. And some of it starts to not be as filled in. So then I take a drier finger and then just blend it out until it doesn't go anymore. And then right here where it's on my girl, I just take a wet paintbrush and wash it away and then dry it. Just like that. The great thing about these inks is that they're acrylic, so once they're dry, they're no longer water reactive. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this now. I'm still not really happy with the background, so I think what I'm going to do is stop the lesson here, and then I'm going to give you all a bonus lesson where I actually go back and fix the background. I'm not going to make you just hang out here while I keep working on this background that I'm really not happy with. I think I should have stopped before I put the white over the top of it, before I did any of the washes actually. When we went through and did the dots and then the red lines, I should have left it right there until after I finished my figure because I wasn't sure how these inks were going to look against the background. So now that I see the inks, I do need a more vivid background. So I'm not happy with this milkiness happening back here. So what I'm going to do is stop the lesson here, and then I will provide you with the bonus lesson of how I end up fixing the background and what it actually looks like in the end, because this I'm just not happy with. I love the girl, I love the purple shading here, but I'm not happy at all with the background. So, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed the class. And I hope you share your paintings in the Facebook group and let me know if you stopped before I did and if you were happy with the background. So, okay, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you enjoyed spending these past 30 days with me. I have enjoyed spending these past 30 days with you, and I so appreciate you being here and taking your time with me. Don't forget, you can always find me on Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all over the internet, so look me up in those places. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, go subscribe over there, because that's where I always post new content, new free videos, and tutorials and things like that. Also, check out my website, www.MEdieology.com. That's where I always have any information on new classes, upcoming events, tutorials, all that good stuff. So, thank you so much for being here and taking this 30-day awakening journey with me. I appreciate you more than you know, and I will see you in the room. Mwah! Bye!